Imagine you're stuck in traffic and you're late for work. No matter how long you wait, the cars around you just aren't moving. If you're anything like me, it's so frustrating, right? You can see your destination in the distance, but you're unable to move, powerless to speed things up. Now, magnify that feeling, not for just a few minutes or hours, but for years. Many people today feel like they're stuck in their careers, relationships, or personal lives, unable to move. They may feel like they've tried everything, self-help books, career changes, social media detoxes, but nothing seems to be working. Are you one of those people? This episode speaks to that frustration of feeling like you know where you want to be, but you just simply can't get there. What if the biggest barrier keeping you stuck isn't external at all? What if the real shift that needs to happen lies within you? And what if breaking free from feeling stuck requires an encounter with something or someone bigger, larger than our circumstances?
He's in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes alone. The hum of the faucet fills the silence, but his mind is anything but quiet. Each task, every chore, it's his way of saying sorry without the words. He doesn't know if he can say them anymore. They don't feel enough. He keeps his head down, absorbed in the rhythm of cleaning, hoping somehow his actions can speak for him.
This sense of being stuck isn't a new problem. In fact, the Bible recounts a story of a man who was physically stuck for 38 years. He was unable to walk, trapped by his circumstances. He spent his days lying by a pool called Bethesda, a place where many disabled people gathered, hoping for healing. Legend had it that when the water was stirred, the first person to step in would be healed. But here's the catch. This man was lame, unable to move quickly enough to reach the pool. Every day he watched others step in ahead of him, receiving the healing he longed for. He wanted the change. He wanted a new direction, but no matter how much he wished for it, nothing ever happened. Sound familiar? Like the lame man, many of us are waiting for something external to change our situation. Something that will shift the course of our lives. But this encounter with Jesus reveals that real transformation doesn't begin when our circumstances change. It starts when we do.
The door opens, and she's home from work. He pours her a glass of water, hands it to her without meeting her eyes. She asks about his day. He keeps it simple. Says he did the laundry, the floors. He doesn't mention the bills, the debt, or the pressure gnawing at him. She smiles, says thank you, but his answers are clipped, and he pulls back, growing distant. He can't let her see too much, can't risk seeing the hurt reflected in her eyes, not again.
In John chapter 5, we find Jesus walking near this pool of Bethesda, a place known for its supposed healing waters. Bethesda was a gathering spot for the suffering, people who were sick, blind, lame, or paralyzed. Everyone was hoping for a miraculous healing. It's a scene filled with desperation. There, among the crowd, Jesus notices a man who stands out. John chapter 5, verses 3-5 tells us, crowds of sick people, blind, lame, or paralyzed, lay on the porches. One of the men lying there had been sick for 38 years. It's hard to fully grasp the frustration and hopelessness this man must have felt after almost 4 decades of being disabled. His life had been confined to a mat by a pool, watching others receive healing. And for years he waited, perhaps at first with hope, but eventually gave up that hope of ever becoming well again. His disability was not only defined by his condition, but also his identity. After 38 years, it's likely that he had accepted this paralysis as permanent. This was his lot in life. But then something unexpected happens. Jesus approaches the man, and his first words are not what you might expect. He doesn't offer immediate healing, nor does he offer comfort. Instead, he asks a question that seems puzzling at first. John chapter 5, verse 6 says, "Would you like to get well?" At first, it appears to be a question with an obvious answer. I mean, who wouldn't want to be healed after being lame for so long? But Jesus isn't just asking about the man's physical state. He's probing deeper into his heart, into his mind. He's essentially asking, are you ready for the transformation that healing will bring?
He heads to his computer, logging in for freelance work. He quickly checks his bank account, a loan account, a debt he doesn't know how to pay, before closing the app with a sigh and diving into his code, filling his head with numbers, symbols, anything but his own shame.
For 38 years, this man had built his identity around his limitations. He had lived in a space of dependency, a place where he was defined by what he couldn't do rather than what he could become. Something that can easily be overlooked is that healing would mean stepping into a whole new life, full of its own challenges and responsibilities, and perhaps even uncertainty. It would mean leaving behind the familiar comfort of his mat, his old identity. And sometimes staying in our current situation, if we have to be honest, no matter how painful, is easier than embracing the unknown that comes with change. You know, many people experience a similar dynamic in their lives, and maybe you're one of them. You feel stuck and frustrated with where you are right now in life. You feel unable to break free from what's holding you back, whether it's your career, relationships, or financial situation. You long for something different, and yet you're still afraid of the change that comes with it. Jesus' question is as relevant for us today as it was for the disabled man back then. He's asking, do you really want change? Sometimes the barriers we face aren't external at all, they're internal. We might be frustrated with our circumstances, but not fully willing to take the steps necessary to walk in a new direction. When the man responds to Jesus' question, he doesn't say, "Yes, I want to be healed." Instead, he gives an excuse. He says, "I can't, sir," the sick man said, "for I have no one to put me into the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone else always gets there ahead of me." His response reflects his mindset after years of disappointment. He had come to terms with his situation and placed his hope in the wrong thing, an external source, the pool and the help of others. For him, healing depended on the right conditions and the right people. His focus was on what he lacked rather than the possibility standing right in front of him. His excuse reveals a sense of helplessness, a belief that he couldn't change his life because of what he lacked.
Later that evening, she stands in the doorway to his home office, watching him work, her voice soft but hopeful. "Why don't we take a break this weekend?" she asked, a small smile lifting the corners of her mouth. "You know, a little getaway, just us, away from all this stress. We can afford it." He doesn't look up. His reply is barely audible. "You can afford it," he says, finally meeting her gaze with eyes heavy with guilt. "I've got debt, a lot of it, and I need the extra work." She searches his face, hurt, but he presses on before she can say more. "Look, you can go," You deserve a break. You've earned it. You're an incredible woman. You work so hard, and I wouldn't be mad. Really, go, enjoy it for the both of us." Without saying anything else, she turns and heads to the couch, sinking into it slowly, her expression shadowed by disappointment and loneliness. She's there, alone in the stillness, sadness settling around her like a heavy weight as he returns to his work, lost in his world of numbers, codes, and debts.
Notice how Jesus responds. He doesn't entertain the man's excuse. He doesn't criticize or rebuke him for his mindset. Instead, he speaks directly into the man's reality and says, "Stand up, pick up your mat, and walk." Jesus cuts through the excuses and invites the man to take action. He doesn't offer to help him into the pool, as the man probably expected. Instead, he empowers the man to leave behind the very place that had defined his life for so long. This is a pivotal moment. It's easy to focus on what we don't have or to blame external factors for our lack of growth. We might feel that we're not where we need to be in life because of a lack of the right connections, the right resources, or the right opportunities. It's tempting sometimes to believe that success or happiness will come only when the circumstances are just right. But Jesus' response teaches us a powerful lesson. The lesson is that you don't need to wait for everything to be perfect. You don't need to wait for someone else to save you. The power to move forward is available to you now. What if Jesus is offering you the opportunity to stand up and walk in a new direction right now? Would you take it? You don't need to wait for the perfect conditions to change. The question is, will you take the first step? Tony Robbins once said that the only impossible journey is the one you never begin. What is that first step for you? After 38 years of being paralyzed, Jesus tells the man to pick up his mat and walk. This was the first step for this man. It's significant that Jesus includes the instruction, pick up your mat. The mat represents the man's old way of life, the place where his illness had him confined. By telling him to pick it up, Jesus is giving him a tangible way to leave his old life behind. The mat, once a symbol of his limitations, is now a symbol of his freedom. The man is no longer confined to it. Instead, he's carrying it as a reminder of how far he's come. What's even more amazing is the man's immediate response. He doesn't argue. He doesn't even question or hesitate. He simply does what Jesus told him to do. And in that moment of obedience, his life was transformed. He doesn't just stand up physically. He walks away from 38 years of limitations, 38 years of dependency, of hopelessness and disappointment. His encounter with Jesus didn't just change his body, it gave him a whole new direction in life.
Later that night, after what feels like hours of silence, she finally gathers her courage. He freezes, her words landing with a force of a weight he's been desperately trying to ignore. She glances down, then back up, her voice trembling but resolute. "I love you," she continues, "but I just can't keep waiting, hoping you'll let me in, hoping you'll let me share this with you. It's too much to carry, and it hurts to feel shut out of your life. If you're not ready to be in this with me," she pauses, and her gaze is steady but filled with pain, "then maybe we need to think about what this really is. Maybe we need to think about a divorce."
If you're seeking a new direction in life, maybe you need to start by picking up your mat. Your mat can represent anything that holds you back. And maybe for you, it's a past mistake or a failure or waiting on other people to do things for you. Jesus' invitation to pick up your mat is a powerful symbol of acting on a decision to move in a new direction in your life. The past no longer defines you or determines your future. It becomes a part of your story. And so real change requires action. And that action begins with faith. Why faith? Well, the man didn't wait to feel strong enough or convinced enough. He just acted on Jesus' word and he obeyed him. And by obeying him, he found freedom. You can experience that same freedom today when you choose to act in faith, leaving behind what's holding you back and walking into the future Jesus has for you. One of the most encouraging aspects of this story is where it takes place. Jesus was at the pool of Bethesda on the Sabbath, a day when many would have avoided such a place. Bethesda was known as a gathering place for the sick and disabled, people who were considered unclean or impure by religious leaders of the day. Yet, this is precisely where Jesus chooses to be. He doesn't shy away from the brokenness and suffering of the people gathered there. Instead, he walks into it, seeking out those who needed him the most. This shows us something beautiful about Jesus' character. He is willing to meet us wherever we are, even in the places others would avoid. He isn't afraid to enter into the messiness of our lives. He seeks us out, even when we feel unworthy or overlooked. Whether it's physical sickness or emotional brokenness, whatever it is, Jesus steps into our reality. For those who feel abandoned, stuck, or in a place of hopelessness, this is an incredible truth. Jesus will meet you right where you are, whether you're there by a pool, whether you're waiting for some external change in your circumstances, or you're just struggling with something internal like fear or doubt. He sees you, and he's willing to come to you. He's offering healing. He's offering hope. He's offering you a new direction.
They've been married for 3 years now. And now, in the shadow of a choice he can't undo, every day feels like another chance for him to prove himself or fall short again. It began innocently enough. He thought he could outsmart the odds, gambled their savings, convinced he could multiply it, secure their future. But he lost it all. Desperate, he took a loan from the bank to try and make it back, but every attempt only sank them deeper. He's carried that weight alone ever since, unable to forgive himself, certain he doesn't deserve her love. Tonight, though, feeling lost and needing some kind of anchor, he calls a friend he hasn't spoken to in a while, someone who knows his struggle. The friend listens quietly and then offers a verse, Romans chapter 5, verse 8. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. The friend lets the verse sink in, then asks, if there's one thing needed to be saved, what is it? After a pause, he replies, to be a sinner. The friend presses, so, do you qualify? It's a painful realization. Yes, I do, he answers, almost choking on the words. His friend's voice is steady. If God can forgive you, maybe it's time you start forgiving yourself. Right now, you're pushing her away because you don't feel good enough for her love. But that's not your choice to make. Let her in. The words cut deep, exposing his shame and leaving him feeling naked, stripped of all the excuses he's been hiding behind.
The first part of John chapter 5, verse 6 says, when Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, this is another example of a simple phrase that reveals a beautiful part of the character of Jesus. He didn't just happen to see the man by the pool. He knew exactly how long the man had been suffering. This wasn't just an encounter based on chance. Jesus was fully aware of this man's condition, his pain, his frustrations, his years of waiting. This is encouraging because not only is Jesus willing to meet us where we are, but it shows that Jesus sees us and knows what we're going through. He knows our struggles, our disappointments, and the things that have kept us stuck. You are not invisible to him. Jesus knows exactly where you are in life. And just as he did with the man at Bethesda, he's reaching out to offer you healing and hope in your journey. The encounter at the pool of Bethesda teaches us that no matter how long we've been stuck, an encounter with Jesus can change everything. The lame man had spent 38 years waiting for something external to change his life, but when Jesus stepped into his world, the real change began inside of him. He was asked to take ownership of his healing, leave behind the excuses, and step into a new life of freedom. You have the opportunity to rise and take action as well, to move in a new direction. Jesus offers that new life, but it requires a response, one of faith and of action. As you reflect on this story, consider this. We all have something that holds us back. Like the man by the pool, Jesus sees you exactly where you are and offers you a new direction. He's asking, would you like to get well? This isn't just about physical healing. It's about something far deeper. It's about stepping into a life of freedom, a life of purpose, and a life of transformation. The power to change your life is available to you now. You don't have to wait to have the perfect conditions. Jesus is just calling you to rise, to walk away from what's kept you back, and to trust him with your future. Will you pick up your mat? Will you move forward in faith? Through an encounter with Jesus, you can experience freedom. You can experience hope today. The choice is yours. Stay by the pool or pick up your mat and walk.
It's late night. Heart pounding, he goes to the bedroom where his wife sleeps. Gently, he reaches for her hand, his voice barely a whisper. I know it's late, but I need to ask you something I should have asked you a long time ago. She stirs, looking at him, waiting. I need you to forgive me, he says, his voice thick with emotion. I'm sorry for everything, for losing the money, for the debt, for shutting you out. I know you've said it before, but I need to hear it again. Yes, she says, I forgive you. If you need me to say it 100 times, I will. But can you forgive yourself too? Do you really see more in me than my mistakes? He asks. Her voice is steady, gentle. I see so much more. I see your dedication, your love, your care. I see your pain, but I also see how you're blocking me out, keeping me from being there with you.
Reflecting on the experience of the paralyzed man, here are just a few practical coaching questions that can help you on your journey this week. Number 1, what mat do you need to pick up and walk with? No longer letting it define you, but become a part of your story of freedom. Number 2, what excuses are you holding on to that are preventing you from moving forward? Finally, number 3, how would your life look like if you trusted Jesus with your future? These questions are designed to help you pause and reflect on what really matters in your life, to assess where you may be feeling stuck and where you might need a new direction. Like the man in this story, we can often find ourselves wanting change, unsure of how to move forward. And sometimes the key to transformation is just simply taking that first step of faith, trusting that Jesus will direct your path. He sees where you are right now, and He's ready to offer that healing, that hope, that future filled with purpose that you so long for. If this message spoke to you today and you'd like to go a little deeper, I invite you to take the next step. Visit hopestudy.ca. It's an online Bible study platform where you'll find easy to follow, interactive guides on a variety of topics. Whether you're exploring faith for the first time or seeking answers to deep spiritual questions, these resources are there to support you. Additionally, I'd love to stay connected with you personally. Follow More to Life on social media. where you can message me directly with your questions, prayer requests, or updates on your journey. Whether you're searching for answers, needing encouragement, or simply just looking for community, together we can discover the new direction that Jesus is calling you.
He looks away, the guilt gnawing at him. I thought carrying this burden alone would somehow make things easier for you, that if I handled the punishment myself, I would protect you. But that's not how this works. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours. Yes, the debt hurt, but it hurts more that you kept me out of the solution. It hurt when you gambled without me, and it hurts now that you're still keeping me away from the path forward. Her words hit him like a wave, washing away the self-imposed exile he'd been living on. Let's let the past be past. Let's carry this together like we promised. He nods, his voice barely a whisper. Together.
For 38 years, he was trapped by his limitations, waiting for external circumstances to change. But when Jesus saw him, he didn't just offer him healing. He called the man to take a step of faith, to rise, pick up his mat, and walk in a new direction. Jesus cut through the excuses and invited him to embrace the freedom that transformation offers him through faith. This story is a reminder that Jesus extends that same invitation to each one of us. Like the man by the pool, we may find ourselves feeling stuck, waiting for that perfect moment or for someone else to change our situation. But today, Jesus offers you a new direction. As Martin Luther King Jr. once said, faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. You may not know what the future holds, but faith means trusting Jesus enough to take that first step. There's more to life than being stuck. Empower your future by leaving your old life behind through faith in Jesus. He sees you, He knows your struggles, and He is calling you to rise up, to leave behind your past, and to step into a new life that He has for you. What if the only thing holding you back from a transformational experience is taking that first step of faith? Would you like to take that today? I'd like to take a moment to invite you to partner with Hope Channel Canada as an agent of hope. You can donate online by visiting agentsofhope.ca. And thank you for partnering with us and making Hope Channel Canada possible.